European leaders have been quick to condemn the riots in Washington, D.C. German Chancellor Angela Merkel blamed the violence on President Trump himself, saying his false claims that he won the election set the atmosphere for last night's events. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, says the unrest is not America. And even UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, an ally of Donald Trump's, has called the scenes disgraceful. And Scotland's Justice Minister has gone so far to call for Trump to be banned from entering the United Kingdom. For more on this, let's cross over to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, widespread condemnation at every political level here in Europe. What do you make of it?
Yeah, indeed, Jack. It's probably unsurprising, wasn't it, to a degree, that we saw that widespread condemnation, use of the words such as disgust about the actions of protesters last night in Washington, D.C. I think what is fascinating, though, were two things. First of all, that it was essentially almost universal. Pretty much every EU leader took to Twitter last night within hours of the protests to condemn what was happening. We haven't really seen that before on any one particular issue, but also the depth of feeling that many had, as you say, Angela Merkel expressing how she was angry and mad at watching those scenes, but also how essentially every leader blamed Donald Trump. It's almost as if the floodgates opened to a degree, Jack, in that leaders were openly attacking the President of the United States. The Portuguese Prime Minister said that President Trump is already a thing of the past. The Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said that he can't wait to work with President Biden. And I think there is a sense here where EU leaders are essentially counting down the days until Trump leaves office with the hope of a familiarity when it comes to the relationship with President Biden. Now, I've been speaking to one former EU leader, the former Italian Minister Enrico Letta, about what happened yesterday, and I began by asking him what he made of those incredible images from Washington, D.C.
My first reaction was surprise. Second reaction was anger. And I think it's something unbelievable, but it is also something that we have to react against it, because it is really the demonstration of how vulnerable is democracy today, our democracies. But also what happened yesterday is the result of a sequence of waves. And it was not just yesterday. It was the final result. So I think we have to think about the level of our democracies, and the reaction against what happened yesterday will be, I think, very important for the future too. I'm afraid that just a reaction like business as usual, okay, now everything is okay. Trump just said he will step back January 20th and so on. Frankly speaking, I don't think it's enough. We need to be tougher, and we need a reaction both on the institutional and on the legal level.
Populism existed before Trump. Many of the problems and the causes of what's led people to be angry existed before Trump. These are really deep structural issues about marginalization, about the lack of economic growth, particularly when it comes to wages for certain sections of our society. They're not going to go away. If it's not Trump, it will be someone else. And we don't seem to be addressing those fundamental issues on both sides of the Atlantic.
I think this discussion about the sociological problems around our societies, the separation between people and more in difficulty and people in less difficulty, or black people, white people, different origins and so on. It is a very important discussion. But today, I don't think this discussion has to be the heart. Because if it is the heart, it's the way of deresponsabilize Trump. And I don't like this solution. I think Trump is responsible of what happened yesterday. And I think democracy has to preserve his rights. and democracy has to be defended. And what happened yesterday needs a response, a very tough response. On the sociological and political term and economic term, I think we have to open up a discussion around the problems related to the acceleration of globalization. That is the key problem. The globalization process had a big acceleration in the last years, and this acceleration is creating anxieties among people. And these anxieties are maybe creating some part of the problems that are related to what happened yesterday.
And just very finally, it was quite extraordinary in many ways, seeing leaders around the world call for calm and the peaceful transition of power in the United States, of all places, yesterday. What damage do you think this has done to the US's reputation internationally, but also to that relationship where we've relied on America, really in the post-war period? What do you think last night's significance might mean for the future of EU-US relations?
I trust Biden. I think Biden will be a fundamental asset for Europe to establish a strong and very effective and powerful and very useful transatlantic relationship. But I think also that the US legitimacy, credibility in the world will have some problems in the future. It would be very problematic to be credible as they were before. Because what happened yesterday is the feeling that something is wrong there. And that will create a lot of problems also related to the fact that there were yesterday, I'm sure, many people in Russia, in China, very happy for what happened yesterday.
And indeed, Darren, there were some fascinating reactions from across the world. What do you think the EU has to do to restructure its relationship with the United States, with the Biden administration, in light of what we saw last night?
Well, I think in many regards, Jack, actually what they're really hoping for is a sense of familiarity when President Biden, or President-elect Biden, takes over in a couple of weeks' time. They do see him as someone who essentially is in support of the European Union, who does want to see countries cooperate together and believes in that relationship. So I think they're thinking and hoping for a relationship that we've seen with previous US presidents, where NATO will remain important, that security blanket, but also working together to take on big global challenges. Now, that's not to say there's going to be agreement on all issues. Clearly, when it comes to things like China, for example, there's already quite a divide between the United States and the European Union in their approach to China. But as I say, I think that people will be hoping that the Trump era, this will be a proper break with what we've seen over the last 4 years. But it is going to be fascinating to see how these things play out, to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But be in no doubt, yesterday's significance, I think largely was that the European Union on whole as a mass essentially broke with Donald Trump. If there was any kind of sense that they wanted to hold back, that certainly did not happen yesterday with that widespread condemnation. And as I say, many EU leaders will be counting down the days on their calendar until January 20th.
Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, thank you very much.